여러분 안녕하세요. 저는 Gwen이라고 하고요. 오늘은 최고의 한국 영화를 추천하도록 합니다. 네, 5가지. Hi everyone, my name is Gwen, and today I'm going to be recommending my top 5 Korean films for you. These are all films that I've seen this semester because I'm taking a Korean film class where I break down Korean cinema and talk about like the significance to Korean history, Korean culture, and the Korean people. So these are the top 5 favorite movies for various reasons that I've seen this semester. So I really hope that you guys can get a chance to watch them at some point. So if one of them catches your eye, definitely watch it. Okay, so the very first film I'm recommending you guys to watch is called Joint Security Area. The Korean title is right underneath. It's called 공동경비구역, and it's also just known as JSA in Korean as well. This is from 2000, and it basically tells the story of South Korean soldiers sneaking to the North Korean soldier base in the middle of the night and actually making friends with the border guards on that side and then sneaking back before daylight, because obviously that's not allowed, no type of friendship or whatever or crossing of the border between those guards. But they form this friendship, and then there's actually a crime that happens, a shooting, and the woman that you see in the center of the movie poster, she is brought in from Switzerland as like a government liaison type person, and she is hired in to find out what happened, what is the truth, who shot who, and exactly what went down there. So on the next slide, I will tell you why this movie made my list. Okay, so why on earth did Joint Security Area make my list of top 5 Korean films? So first of all, I think that the dynamics between the North and South Korean soldiers is really interesting to see, that they're not supposed to like each other or form this friendship, but they end up doing so sort of naturally, I guess. The language differences is another thing that's interesting to listen for if you are a Korean language learner. You can hear the North Korean accent shown in this film, which is really cool. The next thing is that Koreanness transcends the North and South titles. This was a super beautiful thing, and I think it resonates with a lot of Korean audience members as well. The fact that behind the North and South titles, if you drop, the differences in government, differences in culture now, and things like that, they're still just Koreans. And there's sort of that family dynamic there when you actually strip down all of the titles, which I think is really beautiful, even though the countries are still separate. So the third thing is that the main actress plays a Korean from Switzerland who actually had never been to Korea before. So this was interesting to see because she's still treated like a foreigner, even though physical appearance and all that, she could blend in, because she wasn't used to that culture. She was brought up in Switzerland, so she would consider herself Swiss. So that's also a very interesting thing to see playing out. That being said, talking about the main character, she also is able to show the audience and provide the film with the dynamic that shows the difficulty of females in leadership positions, specifically because she is the one that they hired to figure out what happened, why the shooting happened, who shot who, things like that. I think that her character is sort of taken advantage of or looked down upon by a lot of the other masculine authority figures in this film. And then, like I said before, it's a beautiful story of friendship, but it also has that interesting dynamic interesting undertone of a crime that happened that needs to be solved. And the audience the whole time while they're watching it is also thinking, oh, who did it? Wait, what happened? What's going on here? How did this situation turn into what's happening today? And then I just included a quote from the film. In battle, speed isn't important. It's all about how you carry yourself with composure and strength. So I really hope that you take the chance to watch Joint Security Area. Okay, this is my number 2, my second film recommendation for you. This is called Jinyoung. In Korean, it's Jinyoung. And this film is also from 2000. But this one in particular is a story that's been retold time and time again in different versions. So I obviously watched this 2000 version, so I can't speak for other versions of the film, but I really, really enjoyed it, and it's a beautiful story, and I will tell you why on the next slide. Okay, so here are just some of the reasons that Jinyoung has made my top 5 list of recommendations. First thing is that if you're unfamiliar with pansori is a really traditional performance of the voice and using those old drums and things like that. And pansori performances you can still go see today, but they last anywhere from 3 to 5 or 8 to 10 hours of someone just singing. And the actual method that a pansori singer uses to perform is not just regular singing. It's something that they have to train their voice to do. They're literally throwing their voice out of their body, basically. So it's a really difficult performance for them to do. And I think that this film is set up where the story is being told by a pansori performer. So I think that's really cool as well. We're watching this story, but in the back of our minds, we're remembering, oh yeah, we are currently watching pansori. Like this story that we're seeing being played out is being sung by somebody. And if you watch this film, you will gauge more of what I mean by that. But it also showcases the historical mannerisms and obligations of women in old-timey Korea. The importance of changing the hanbok color when you're married or single. So usually unmarried women wore like pale colors, and then when you were married, you had to change your hanbok skirt color to like a dark navy blue or like, just darker colors like that, darker tones. And then bright colors were reserved for royalty usually. Like nobody except the king could wear like yellows or golds, things like that. So yeah, typically that's how you distinguished when someone was married or single. Because usually if you wore like a light colored skirt, then you're showing your maidenhood. And I think that those important hanbok colors show their significance in this film. Duties of royalty to dedicate their entire lives to passing the civil service exam. This can definitely be shown as one of our main characters. All he does is study. And when he finally falls in love with Jinyoung, he starts, neglecting his studies to hang out with her, spend time with her, which causes his family to get upset. So I definitely think that this is something that we can see, like the old perspectives of, or the old ideals of what was important and what you should be focusing on rather than love. Infidelity was obviously seen as a crime in old Korea. However, it was seen as punishable by death in this particular movie. So I think that that scene that's coming to mind right now was really emotional, and I really hope that you get the chance to watch it as well. And then another thing that it touches on are the expectations of a man versus a woman pre-marriage in Korea. In old Korea, again, this is a historical historically set film. So typically the men were expected to have multiple like suitors, if that makes sense, or have multiple women or rendezvous. Like that was perfectly okay for them to do, but for the person they were actually going to marry, that woman needed to be a virgin. She needed to be pure and have never had any relations with a man. So that is very obviously that double standard of like what's okay for a woman versus a man. And that was also super cool to see being played out in this film. So just a quote from the film is, "I know a woman's duty, so how can I serve two men?" I hope you watch Jinyoung. Taxi Driver! Oh my gosh. I shouldn't even have to explain why this movie made my list. Again, these films are not listed in order of importance. I literally just put them in the order by date. So we started with 2000 and we're going to end with 2019. This is probably my favorite movie on my list. I absolutely love it. It's so emotional. It's so sweet. It's so pure. Please, please, please watch this movie. Even if you don't watch any of the other ones on this one is so, so good. So the Korean title is Taexi, which is taxi. 운전사. 운전사 is driver. So it's exactly translated. And so from these pictures that we can see, it's about a taxi driver, surprise, surprise, during the Gwangju Rebellion of 1980. And then in the right-hand side picture, we can see a reporter. So the taxi driver basically picks up this foreign reporter to take him to Gwangju. And he doesn't realize, he's just trying to get paid. You know, taxi drivers only care about the money. But he doesn't realize that the reporter is actually going to cover the story of what's happening there, of the rebellion. And so they go through this whole adventure and they develop this sort of friendship, even though they can't speak the same language. I think that is probably the most beautiful aspect of this movie, other than the fact that it was based on a real story. The Gwangju Rebellion really did happen in 1980, and I think that this is one of those films that probably almost every Korean has seen or at least knows about. So definitely recommend this one. Okay, so I know I already phrased it in the last slide, but some of the reasons A Taxi Driver made my top 5 list is that it has a really accurate portrayal of Korean taxi drivers. I think that I found myself laughing a lot at the beginning, even when there wasn't necessarily a funny line being said, just because I could remember my experience with lots of the Korean taxi drivers, and they're very, like, not mean, but, like, straight to the point. Like, they're just like, okay, that'll be $5, or, like, they just don't want to have any, like, nonsense or, like, whatever. So they're just very straight to the point and tired and all that stuff. So I thought that it did a really good job at portraying that, especially in the main actor. So I also liked that it really showed the brutality and just the awful situation that was the Gwangju Rebellion. It was based off a true event, like I said before, so I think it's important in general for people interested in Korean culture, wanting to know more, to watch this film, just because they can get sort of an inside look into something, a very historically important event for Koreans. And then the main characters are also based on real people. I did not know that before watching this. But yeah, at the end of the film, I went through the whole, like, emotional thing of watching the whole film, and then at the end they said, you know, one of those little stupid text blips that's like, oh, this person, this is what he's doing now, and I was just like, oh my gosh. So yeah, the foreign news reporter and the taxi driver are both based on real people, and this really did happen. And then the news reporter interacting with the Korean taxi driver was just so heartwarming and cute, because neither one of them, like, the taxi driver is not fluent in English, the reporter knows no Korean, and they're somehow able to make this bond that they would, like, protect each other for anything, even in, like, deaths away. Like, they're able to just sort of band together in this crisis. And I think that actually really hits home with a lot of Koreans as well. It's like, wow, even though they don't speak the same language, they have the same heart or something. Like, that sort of ideal seems to strike a lot of chords with the Korean audience as well. Again, this seems to be one of the most influential Korean films out there, which is why I would highly recommend it. A lot of Koreans, especially all my friends, have definitely seen this movie, so it is definitely one that you're going to want to have watched. And And then the final point is that is such a powerful testament of democracy, because that was ultimately what was going on. The dictator of Korea at the time had been assassinated, so that ended the 18-year-long dictatorship that had its hold over Korea. But then an army general made like a military coup, and they took over Gwangju. And what they did was they cut all like telephone lines, all basically communication with the other regions of Korea. So nobody really knew what was going on in Gwangju, but the Gwangju people, they were basically just getting mass murdered for standing up and protesting for democracy. And like people in Seoul didn't even know what was going on. Like it was just, no one knew that Gwangju even needed help. They just kind of let it happen in a way. So I think that this is also a really powerful film because of the student-led movements. That's probably why it strikes such a big chord with me, is because most of the protesters and demonstrators were high school and college age students. So that's really beautiful to me to know and to be able to see that, okay, I can make a difference in even my government or something, you know. And then finally, Korean loyalty. There's a specific scene that I don't want to go into at the end, but you'll see it if you watch it, where a group of taxi drivers that had just met not too long ago, and they had just met the taxi driver from Seoul, the main character, and the foreign news reporter, and even though they had just met them, they helped them escape Gwangju. So I'll leave it at that. But that's just another really nice scene to see that, okay, even if we're strangers, we're going to help each other because that's what Koreanness is. It's showing loyalty and heart to people that even maybe aren't your real family, things like that. So one of the quotes from the film is, "We'd rather die standing than live on our knees." So I will leave you with that, and we'll go on to recommendation number 4. Okay, Burning. This one is really, really so good. So this is from 2017 as well, just like Taxi Driver. And this is the story of basically a sociopath who starts dating a girl that another guy is in love with. So if that wasn't confusing enough, it's basically that story, and the guy that has this unrequited love with the girl is trying to save her from this weird guy or weird situation. And obviously I won't tell you what happens if he saved her or not, but you'll just have to watch the movie to find out. And in the next scene, the next slide, whoa, I'm thinking in movies now. In the next slide, I will tell you why this movie made my list. So some of the reasons why Burning made my top 5 list of Korean films for you guys is that it centers around a murder mystery type of storyline. So it's definitely different than the other ones that I have recommended. And if you're like a Criminal Minds fan or something like that, like me, you'll definitely enjoy this film. It also centers around a one-sided love story, which is kind of sad, but also heartwarming to see because it shows like the great risks and lengths that a person's willing to go to for someone that they love. This film has also won several film festival awards, so obviously it has to be contained in this list of things I recommend to you guys. One of the interesting things at play in this film is that it really shows the toxicity of Korean misogyny. So things like just not taking the female character seriously, kind of throwing her around like she's worthless, like that sort of dynamic is at play here, which I think is important to be shown. And it also adds to the mystery storyline, as you will see if you watch it. This also outlines the differences between the rich and the poor classes in Korea. The guy that is having the sort of one-sided love for the woman, he is from like a farm background. He always goes out and tends to his cow, works in the yard. And then the other guy, I guess, I don't know how to describe them, but the other man is from sort of a more wealthy background. He just plays all day. He doesn't really have like a legitimate job, things like that, but he drives a Porsche. So we can definitely see the class dynamics at play in this film as well. Another thing I really, really like is that lots of Korean landscapes are shown. Like I just said, you can be taken into the city in this film. You can see the cafes, but you can also see like the agricultural section. You can see they take you up to an apartment that's on a hill, right, looking up out into Namsan Tower in Seoul. So you can see a lot of different types of like housing and just landscapes in Korea in this film, which I think is really cool. The last comment I put is that plastic surgery is common in Korea. The reason I put this down is because I think it's so important the way it was portrayed in this film. Like it was not even talked about or dwelled on. It was just the main character. She had just said it in passing, like, oh, do you recognize me? Do you remember me? We used to go to school together. We used to live in the same neighborhood. And he's just like looking at her really confused. And she's like, oh, I changed my face. And then I was just like, what? Like for a Westerner, that just seems like such a weird sentence. Like, oh yeah, it's not a big deal. I changed my face. I got plastic surgery. That's why you don't recognize me. And he's like, oh, okay. And like then they just go on like normal. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's crazy. So please watch Burning. And a quote from the film is, you can make it disappear like it never even existed. Ooh. Parasite! Okay, so hopefully you guys have heard of this movie. It's from 2019, and I just had to give a quick round of applause to the director Bong Joon-ho for this film. It is absolutely genius. It's called Kisaeng-chung in Korean. You can see it underneath. Kisaeng means rigor, and then chung means bug. So the word for parasite literally means like bug of vigor, which I think was a really interesting title as well, because this family from like a poor background sort of invades this wealthy household by kind of conning them, which you can see if you watch the film. Hopefully you've seen it already. It's so good. It got several awards. So it was definitely one of those things that you would have had to try not to hear about it. So I really hope that you guys take the chance to watch this film, and I will tell you why it made my top 5 list in the next slide. Okay, so some of the reasons why Parasite has made my top 5 list of movies that I want to recommend to you guys is that it really did a good job at portraying a realistic Korea. And I think that this is something a lot of Koreans have critiqued films for doing in the past, is making the Korean the stereotype. So I think that this movie was really important and needed to be made because it showed Koreans in a light more than just as the stereotypical like smart Asian or like the nerdy best friend that can never find love or something like that. I think that Koreans are really annoyed with being shown in that sort of light, especially with in the international film industry. So I think that the fact that this film actually was able to break through and make like international news is really, really important, and I think influential for the future of Korean cinema as well. It also has a really incredible director named Bong Joon-ho, and he's actually nicknamed Director Bong Tail for his attention to detail. So if you've seen Snowpiercer, he also directed that one, as well as many other films. But one example of his crazy attention to detail in Parasite is that he wanted the audience to be able to fall into the story, to be able to believe the things that he was telling us through his directing and through the screenplay. So he didn't want the reason we fell out of the story to be because of like a prop or something that he could have made better. So he actually had his art team find a trash can that made no sound, because he thought, okay, that is the type of trash can that this wealthy family would have, is one that makes no sound, and it just, that is what I want. He thought, so he told his design team, okay, find this trash can that makes absolutely no sound for this movie. And they found one, and it was, the trash can that they used in the film was $2,500. So now you can see why he's nicknamed Director Bong Tail, for his attention to detail, which at sometimes can be costly. In this film, we can also see rich versus poor class dynamics. We can see this played out in the housing, in the clothes that the people are wearing, even in the type of alcohol that they prefer to drink. Wine versus, soju or something at the convenience store. So this is kind of one of the central issues or themes, I think, with the movie. Another thing that we can really see being played out is the importance of SKY universities. So the SKY acronym stands for Seoul National University, Korea University, and Yonsei University. So these three universities are the top ones in Korea, and students really try their best, like their entire high school career just dedicated to acing exams so that they can get accepted to one of these SKY universities. And we can see that sort of dynamic in play here, and the importance of being a graduate of one of those universities, which actually Director Bong Joon-ho did graduate from Yonsei University, which is that Y in the acronym, which is pretty cool. This film also won the awards for Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, Best International Feature, and Best Picture at the 2019 Oscars, which is why obviously it has made my list. This film, I think, is beautiful because it transcends the Korean audience, and it's more of a global film, which is what makes it so important for Western viewers to watch and sort of see the Korean aspects being played out as well, and to become more familiar with Korean culture through Parasite. I also think it's really entertaining, obviously, to watch this family sort of weasel their way into this wealthy household. So a quote from the film is, "The best plan is no plan at all." So let me know in the comments, have you guys seen any of these films? Are there any that you would like to see after I sort of introduce them to you? Please let me know, and then I will see you next week in another video. Stay healthy, everyone. Don't get corona. 다음에 봐요.